out without taking a lunch here, trying to get it finished, and hope everybody can hang in there. Next item on the agenda is Wildlife Damage Management Committee, Commissioner Raine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. This has gone out to an excruciating amount of public comment and scrutiny here in the past. It originated after went through the Heritage Committee. We spent hours on it. A lot of it was discussion of these three policies, and then went to the full commission, at which point in time a motion was made to approve all the projects as submitted, specifically projects 10, 23, 26, and 27. The details of those projects must be specifically approved by the Predator Committee of the Commission with full presentation to the Commission for approval. And that passed the Commission with 7-2 vote. Everybody that was here that was on the Commission voted for that. We later had a committee meeting, and at that committee meeting we were advised by council and other things that, you know, we should come up with a project that has to be relatively similar to that original proposals that we passed, that the full commission passed. And what we came up with at the committee meeting, the unanimous vote, was what was sent here in our support material. And I don't believe I need to read those because we all have a copy of those. What was sent out of what was approved by the committee, and therefore that's what we have.
Does everybody have a copy of the proposal?
Are yours dated? I just want to make sure we're looking at the same thing. 11/24/2009. Is that?
Mine's not dated.
Is it? This one says modified proposals. Is that?
Suzanne emailed it out. Support material for agenda item 17.
This was in the packet.
I can
something emailed later. Or?
Came later, I think, after the initials.
to eliminate the possibility of
those were the initials.
Confusion. Would you like me to read the first one so that we can make sure?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read the first one to make sure that this, and then the rest of them should follow behind it. First one was, I'll go straight to project description on 1027, and that would be a Predator. That's the one we should have. The first one being 1023. Excuse me.
Sagebrush. I think that's it.
You want to go? Okay. Yeah, the one as she listed it was as it was handed to us was 1027 in our packet that was given out by. All right, is that the one you got? 1027. A predation management project is proposed for the enhancement of sage-grouse nesting success, recruitment and survival in management areas 6 and 7, known sage-grouse predators, parentheses, i.e. ravens, coyotes, badgers, skunks, and parentheses, will be targeted for lethal control where they occur relative to specific elect sites in area 6 and 7 during the spring/summer period of active nesting behavior, in particular, elect sites in the vicinity of landfill locations near Jackpot, Nevada, Unit 0, parentheses, Unit 076, will be targeted for intensive predator control, period. Predation management activities will be performed by contracted personnel, USDA, APHIS, Wildlife Services, in parentheses, using currently approved techniques under the direction of and in cooperation with Nevada Department of Wildlife. Then project area 6 and 7, ravens, coyotes, badgers, skunks, control period 2010, expenditures $50,000, control effort and techniques. Control efforts will target predatory ravens, coyotes, badgers, and skunks during the sage-grouse spring and summer nesting activity. In the parentheses, March 1st through June 30th, 2010. In and around designated elects in an attempt to promote sage-grouse survival, nesting success, and recruitment. Methods of control may include distribution of chicken eggs treated with DRC-1339. Lethal control of ravens may only be performed under permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The permittee is legally required to abide by the conditions of the permit. Coyote control will be accomplished by aerial hunting, trapping, calling, and shooting. Badger and skunk control will be trapping and shooting. and monitoring. NDOW is requested to perform comprehensive pre- and post-treatment monitoring outside the scope of this heritage project funding before the control efforts begin and prior to the same period, 2011. So that's the copy you have then. That's the copy everybody's got. Then I don't know that I really need to read in detail the other two.
Mr. Chairman,
1026 or
could I ask for
1023.
clarification? You didn't state, though, Commissioner Raine, who's the proponent for this?
I'll go over the first line there with you. Heritage proposal number 1027, original proponent, Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, in parentheses, Pat Laughlin, I believe, president. 2010, the amount requested was $250,000 for 5 years. The amount that it was approved, and this would approve, was $50,000 for fiscal year 2010. That's sufficient, sir?
Mm-hmm.
And then each one of the concurrent projects, I don't believe I need to read, unless you really like me reading. Is it, everybody knows what we got?
I'm still searching.
For 1026 and 1023.
Let me know when you
I'll
find
follow
it.
along. I'll follow along with Fran here. I think it's the same thing, it's just slightly different format here.
You have it?
Yeah, I'll follow.
With,
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could maybe clarify some of the confusion, especially with the cabs. Originally, the project proposals that came in from Mr. Freddy and Mr. Laughlin were these handwritten forms. And what the instruction from the commission was for NDOW staff to work with the project proponents to bring those up to NAC standard, and we worked with the proponents to do so. That's what Mr. Raine just read, okay? So when the material went out to everybody, they saw 3 project proposals that were handwritten, submitted, 3 proposals, that basically the same thing, that the staff worked with the proponents, which Mr. Raine just read, and then there were 2 alternative proposals that were provided as well.
And these were slight rewordings of that were slightly reworded at the committee level.
And we made an effort to make sure that we captured what the proponents were asking for, so that the Predator Committee could better evaluate what they were asking to be done.
I think for the record, I mean, Mr. Stockton, is it better that I read the other 2, or are we good?
Copies were made available to the public, right?
That is my understanding, Mr. Secretary, is that correct?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
posted on the website and sent via mail as support material.
I think as long as they were made available to the public and everybody knows, it's all right. We don't have to read it.
I'd be happy to, but
does any commissioner have any questions on these before I open it up to the public? Then Commissioner McBeth.
Yes. There were 2 alternative projects proposed by the Department of Wildlife, and I understand that those were not discussed in the committee meeting. Is that correct?
Didn't they say they couldn't?
I would not say that they were not discussed. We discussed them to some extent, and we were given advice from council to make sure that whatever we came up with, not specific of any one of those, but whatever we came up with basically mirrored, in general, the original proposals, because that's what was approved by the commission, that we should not go off on a essential wild tangent and come up with something totally different. And so that's what we did. We came up with the closest one we could.
Maybe I could clarify, and I think it should be in the minutes of the committee meeting, is what the commission voted on the original proposal, as I recall it, was to refer those 3 proposals back to the committee to fill in the details so that they could be fleshed out to decide whether they really wanted to do it. And I think the commission gave the committee to approve it if they filled in the details. So my advice was, if you're just filling in the details on the project reviewed by the commission, the committee has the authority to approve it. If they wanted to adopt the alternatives proposed by the department, that hadn't been considered in a public meeting by the commission, and so if they adopted these, the alternative proposals, they would have to come back to the full commission. So that was my advice.
To follow up.
Commissioner McGrath?
Yeah. If that's the case, and we're going forward with these three projects, I guess a huge hole that I have in the understanding how these three projects are going to work is that if the proponent is, in two instances, the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, Pat Laughlin, and the other Hunters Alert, Cecil Freddy, what is the flow of funds, and who's responsible for dealing with wildlife services under these three projects?
That's an operational thing. I don't know. You're asking me.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Capurro?
first of all, the department did, I'm a member of that committee, they did bring forward, sorry, I'm a member of the committee itself. That proposal was brought forth by the department. It was discussed at length. The final product is, as you see it here, basically we felt that these projects were better projects to begin with than the ones that the department had suggested. And these had already been discussed before with people and indicated to them what the projects were going to be.
Yeah.
If I'm reading correctly what the DAG is saying, that, are you saying that we don't even have to vote on this today as long as we stuck with these?
No, you didn't have to vote. What the committee voted to do was to recommend these back to the commission. If the committee had the authority, if you wanted to at that meeting, you could have adopted them and passed them. But the committee elected to refer it back to the full commission, so.
And I felt that was only fair, and it followed the spirit. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, and only the commission can authorize expenditure of heritage dollars.
Okay. Right.
So the subcommittee only was a recommendation to the full commission for action.
That's what's an action item on.
Correct.
Because we have to vote on it. Commissioner McGrath?
So I just asked the question of how is this going to work? I got a gaping hole in my understanding of how it's going to work. And so is this something that, who am I asking this question to, I guess is my first question. If the proponent is the Alliance for Wildlife, is the check going to be cut to them, and they then go to Wildlife Service to enter into a contract? What is Endow's place in this?
Endow can do it if they want to, right?
Well, actually, I apologize. I was not able to call in for this, or was I? I don't remember. Actually, I do have some questions and concerns looking at this as far as what is expected from Endow. So I'd like to, if the proponents of the project are here, I'd like to just have them come up and explain what part of the project they intend to take, and then what they expect the department to do as far as these projects are concerned.
For the record, Pat Laughlin, Nevada Alliance for Wildlife. These are questions that we've been asking all along too. You know, how are we going to?
I didn't open up to public comment yet. I'm still with the commission.
I thought it was, okay.
And I'll open up in a minute here. Does any commissioner, have any other questions, or the department? I can answer some of the questions. With heritage projects, we need to enter into a financial agreement with Wildlife Services to do these, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they
No,
can,
well, not necessarily. With heritage projects, the way the heritage program works, the project proponents make a proposal to the commission. It has to meet certain NAC requirements.
Right.
Okay, if the commission chooses to fund all or part thereof the proposal, the project proponents then carry out the project, and the department reimburses the project proponent for the work that they undertook. So use the university as an example, or the fraternity. They want to do a habitat improvement project, and you fund $5,000 for a guzzler. They go out, they do the work, they get the volunteers, they pay the money, they put it in, and then they submit a bill to us, and then we pay them. Okay, but they do all the contracting, they do all the groundwork. Okay, with Wildlife Services, if it was a department proposal and you approved it, we would then write a contract with Wildlife Services and do the work. That's how it works.
Or you could, since this was a project the commission approved, even though it wasn't yours, you could take it over and you could bill. You can't bill Department of Agriculture like you do on the $3 predator fees?
No, let me just jump in there. No, that's not the case. So if the commission approves the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, then they're the proponent of the program, and the commission, unless there's an assignment or something like that that the department agrees to from the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, and whether or not that would have to be approved by the commission, I mean, that's a lot more complicated. You're voting on a project today for the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, and based on the operational concerns, the commission, I don't think the commission can direct the department to accept the program in the place of Nevada Alliance for Wildlife.
The question we had of a commissioner, and I agree, is the process of who gets paid, because the department, what happens is Gabe from Endow sends a contract to an individual to sign, whoever it is, and it's a boilerplate, and that can take some time, 2 weeks, and then it returns signed contract, it goes, and then it's got to be processed. It's got to go to Deputy Director Haskins, it's got to go to your ASO 3 Prather, and it's got to go to Attorney General Stockton to sign it, or somebody. It's got to be approved. And then it goes to the Board of Examiners. And the Board of Examiners does not have to go to the Board of Examiners.
No, it's not part of the executive budget. That's the beauty of the Heritage Fund.
Okay.
You have much more flexibility to do this. You don't have to go to IFC and DOE.
I thought Heritage had to go to the Board of Examiners.
No, it doesn't. That's the beauty of it.
That's great. Do you see any problem and any stalemate holding up the funding of this? I mean,
no, not whatsoever. Except then the next step after this process would be then Mr. Laughlin's organization would then contract with Wildlife Services to do the work, and then we would reimburse them based on the contract that we have between Mr. Laughlin's group and the department.
And what kind of, do you understand that then? And so that way it doesn't have to go to the Board of Examiners. They're going to do a contract with.
Yeah. Well, so now that leads me to a follow-up question of Wildlife Services, and maybe Mark Jensen can answer this question. Does Wildlife Service have the authority to enter into a contract like that? Is that within
the answer's yes, I think.
Within the realm?
We're going to have Mark come. The answer is yes.
One other thing, I will offer that if you approve these projects, we can. This is totally out of sync with what NAC tells us that we should be doing. But we could write the contract between Endow and Wildlife Services to conduct these 3 projects, okay, because they're all with Wildlife Services. But the department is not taking responsibility for the project implementation. What we would need is the project proponents to help us write the scope of work and that monitor the program, and that Wildlife Services or the proponent would be responsible for doing the final report at the end of it that we have to have in our files, that we do an assessment to you
Maybe
guys.
that seems logical to keep
Actually,
you guys involved.
I think the director misspoke a little. The contract would be between the proponent of the project, and Wildlife Services, not Endow and Wildlife Services.
But we would do the contracting part. We know that they're not geared up to do that, but the contract would be between Wildlife Services and the proponents.
It seems to me that you should be involved in the thing, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Commissioner Macbeth, let me go back to him because he was.
Okay. I have, Mark Jensen, I've read your NEPA documents, your DR Fonzie's on the wildlife portions of this of the predator control work that's done for the Department of Wildlife, and I have a distinct recollection that Wildlife Services work is only done at the direction of the Department of Wildlife, and so I'm struggling with understanding how that works, how you meet your own NEPA documents and do a project that is with somebody else other than the Department of Wildlife.
Would you step up here, Mark, so we can get you on tape?
For the record, my name is Mark Jensen. I'm the State Director for the USDA Wildlife Services Program. In answer to your NEPA questions, we would be, I guess, assuming that if this commission approves the heritage projects, even though it's approving a project for the Alliance for Wildlife, that would meet the rule of, or the, I guess, the spirit of the NEPA as far as the commission is approving that.
Well, I think the commission is separate from the department, and I think your NEPA documents talk about the department, and so I'm not sure that you can bridge that gap, and maybe this is something you need to maybe go back to your council and just make sure that you're okay to do this.
And we'll definitely take that under advisement and take a look at it.
Okay.
Commissioner Capurro?
Yeah, what I'm concerned about is,
Thanks, Mark.
in both cases of the projects, that there not be any impropriety with respect to the spending of those funds. I don't think it's the intent of either of those parties to perform any part of the activities that are proposed in the plan. It was, I believe, their intent to have the department do it. Perhaps there's a solution to this, in that since it did come through the committee and is in front of the commission, it is possible, and since it was approved by the commission before, why wouldn't it be possible to, under the proponent, that it be the Nevada Wildlife Commission?
It's their project, that's why.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, we have never, in the history of this program that I'm aware of, taken on the responsibilities of another proponent's project, okay? It's either our project or their project, or others' projects. And then we have to leave it up to the legal staff of whether or not this is now a commission.
Commissioner Raine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our meeting, this was brought up, and it, under the advice of staff, I was told to drop it. Therefore, I dropped it. That was the advice I was given, sir?
To drop, I'm sorry.
By under the,
clear on what you're
okay, to drop the thought of the commission being the proponent.
Yes.
That concept was not acceptable, so we dropped it.
Yeah, if you look at the wildlife heritage statutes, they have to be submitted by a certain deadline. If you let the department step in and take over the project, I think this was my analysis, I'm drawing back on my memory banks, but because of the deadline, the projects have to be submitted by a certain deadline, so it wouldn't be fair just to transfer it to the department. And the commission does not have authority to transfer that to the department without the department's, I mean, the department would have to say, yes, we want to do that.
Nor to ourselves. Nor to ourselves.
Correct.
That was
Correct.
that we could not be the proponent.
Correct.
Okay. Answer my question.
And just to follow up on it, Mr. Chairman, I think that most of the other things we're discussing are outside of the, I mean, that's kind of between the proponents. That's outside of what we can have power over today. About we have any say over, essentially. That's between the
Commissioner
proponents
Macbeth brought
and
up about
Yeah.
funding and then,
And we would be willing to help write the contract with the proponent, with Wildlife Services, because we have that expertise
I'm
in-house.
sure you're going to cooperate with whatever you can, even though it's not your project. I mean, the next one will be your project.
Well, from an ethical perspective, this was not our proposal, they were not our proposals, and we gave a biological assessment during the heritage and so we will help facilitate what you want to get done, but we're not going to take ownership of those projects. It's the proponent. They live and die by what they propose to do, and we'll help facilitate the legwork, if you will.
Commissioner Cabrillo.
As to then clarify what I'd like to see, so going back to this impropriety issue, when that contract is written, I would like to see language in there saying that the proponents will not monetarily benefit from the planned project.
We cannot hear you in the audience at all.
What I'd like to see in the contract would be language that basically says that the proponents of the two different projects would not monetarily benefit from the implementation of these plans.
I don't see why that couldn't be incorporated in the contract.
Well, we could probably hear from Mr. Laughlin and Mr. Freddie if you wanted to, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sure we'll probably hear from them, huh?
If I could, just from, the lawyer's got to keep you on track, right? So, I have some concerns about the authority of the state to write a contract for the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, and the Attorney General's office by statute is only legal counselor to the state, and so maybe Ms. Newt or Ms. Wynn can elaborate.
Right, and I hope that there's no misunderstanding that we are actually going to be writing or negotiating the contract. What we mean by offering our work is because we have experience in these projects, we can provide them with a standard form of a contract that was used, and then they can use that and modify it, talk with their legal counsel if necessary, and negotiate the contract and have it implemented the way that is best for their project. But as far as our responsibility, like Dag Stockton said, I represent the department. The department is not counsel for the proponent, and they cannot negotiate or finalize any contract for them. That is all up to the proponent.
I'm sure you'd give them good advice because we all want it to succeed, you know.
Well, but that's just the thing. The Attorney General's office, by law, can't give advice to a private party.
Right. But you could give it to the agency, the contract, and they could present it to them.
Actually, the agency would not be allowed to provide legal advice to the proponent either, one being that they're not
They
a
could give a
legal law
contract
firm.
to them then?
We can provide them with a form that has been used previously.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Sure. Okay. Commissioner Raine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One concern that was brought up here about where the money would go and who could possibly profit has been brought up at previous meetings, and as stated exactly in these contracts and has been stated at multiple occasions by the proponents of these contracts, including at our last committee meeting, that all of the money would go to USDA, APHIS, Wildlife Services in the case of each one of these three projects. It's that way already written on their project form, and it has been stated in the minutes of multiple meetings that is what would happen. So I don't know how we could further clarify.
Mr. Chairman, maybe you can ask Mark.
Let's have Mark come up here.
The question of contracting, if you get approval for these projects, you'll just start gearing up and start getting the work done, and then when completed, you'd submit a bill to be reimbursed.
Again, for the record, Mark Jensen, State Director. The way I understand this, and again, I could be wrong, but the way I understand it is the proponent would enter into the standard boilerplate agreement contract for the heritage dollars. The proponent would do that. Me, on the federal side, I have federal authority to enter into agreements with individuals, groups, corporations, a variety of entities. I already have, thanks for the offer, but we already have our contracts, our lawyers, we have all of that in place. So I would enter into an agreement with the proponent to do the work based on the agreement that we come up with. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, I have a...
Commissioner McBeth.
Mark, I understand that, I guess I can understand that in the context of the work that you do in agriculture. But does that also apply to work that you do with wildlife? And I'm going back to the NEPA documents that basically say under the direction of the Department of Wildlife. There's a gap there that I'm just...
We do a variety of different work in wildlife damage management. And granted, the department, we do work closely with the department on a variety of different things. The department issues me a depredation permit to take a certain number of animals that we deem necessary to do our work. We get an aerial permit from the department to do our work. So we work very closely with the department on a variety of issues. But again, to answer your question, I think that we are covered with our current NEPA. Again, you raise a good question. We'll go back and take a look at it. But based on my experience with our NEPA documents that we have in place, we're covered. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Mark. Let's open this up to the public here, comment, and see if we have any other ideas. We had some people want to talk, right?
Mr. Chairman, we had three people in the audience and one lady who was here earlier. Okay, make that 5. I see one back there raising his hand. I'll make sure I call on you, Mr. Moldy. So I'd like to read this document for a Doris Weber. She was here earlier, and she said she had to go, so she asked me to read this for her. And she wrote this here in the audience earlier. Doris Weber. I oppose wildlife damage management heritage predator projects 1023, 1026, 1027. I'm a Nevada citizen, and in theory, I, along with the rest of Nevada citizens, own the wildlife in Nevada. No one asked my permission to slaughter the coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, and bears. I oppose totally inhumane proposed use of helicopters, traps, snares. These actions are not hunting, it is a massacre. If the Commission is firm on adopting this senseless slaughter, then I propose the following restriction additions: elimination of said predator assigned to the anxious hunters who would like to count bodies. They will be restricted from using helicopter snares, traps, or other such devices, includes high-powered rifles and any motorized vehicle, and must conduct their hunt as real hunter does on foot. Signed, Doris Weber. Okay, now
Put that in there.
I'll stick this right in the file. And next we have Don Moldy, followed by Tom Smith. And there's a couple others.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Don Moldy, Reno, representing myself. I guess I have more of a question, sort of along the lines that Commissioner McBeth was mentioning. Am I to understand then that if we go ahead with this, what we have would be something new, I guess, would be a private group of individuals who get an idea about, in this case, predator management, or from my point of view, destroying public property, perhaps without a reason or justification, who then can fill out a Heritage Fund request, come to the Commission, perhaps get approval of the money, then with some kind of an interesting contractual arrangement, then that private group can contract with Wildlife Services to kill Nevada wildlife without any oversight in terms of on-the-ground activity or pre or post surveys or any of that sort of thing by the Department of Wildlife, which is the responsible agency to look after the public's wildlife heritage. Is that basically what we're talking about?
Individuals, Don, can submit requests to the Heritage Committee, and you as a member of the SPCA can submit a project to the Heritage Committee for funding and approval. The University of Nevada does, and as long as it falls within the guidelines of the Heritage, individuals can request projects. We had a guy come out from Utah on wild horses, and he submitted a project to study distribution of wild horses in the West. That was an individual. And he had a project, I don't know how many dollars. So individuals have and can submit their own projects to the Heritage Committee.
Well, and I will. I've got one in mind. I'll be doing that
I mean,
shortly.
the public's welcome to it. That's what the...
Yeah. In this case, though, we're talking about the death, the destruction of public property, not simply a study or a survey or photographs or scent, markings and so on. And to me, this sounds like a very dangerous and uncertain enterprise to have a route by which private individuals who may have a bias against a particular animal that's native to this state, to have a funding route to come in and hire wildlife services to kill the animal, totally aside from what state government's responsibility is with respect to looking after the wildlife public heritage. I think it's a crazy idea, and I would suggest that you dump it. Thanks.
We had Tom Smith, followed by Tina Nappy.
Hello, for the record, I'm Tom Smith. Earlier this year, we had a very contentious legislative session, and in that session, AB 241 was defeated. That was a proposal to strip the Heritage Fund of 40% of all of its funds for predator management. That was defeated by the state legislature. 362 was also defeated. It would have taken the $3 predator fee charged on each license application and converted it to predator management for mule deer. That was also defeated. Now I see that the Wildlife Commission, they didn't get the 40% that they asked for in stripping for, or I shouldn't say the Wildlife Commission, but the 40% was not taken for predator management. That was defeated by the state legislature. And now I see we're going kind of through the back door and still taking the funds from the Heritage Fund for predator control. And again, that proposal was defeated in the state legislature earlier this year. And I really feel that this is overstepping to continue to take funds and the large amounts we're discussing for predator control from the Heritage Fund. Right now, the funds that I've seen with the $163,000 was already approved, and the funds that are being asked for now, that's a total of $929,000 in funds being taken from the Heritage account. And I really don't believe that that's, you can do the figures if you want to. There's 566 there, there's 250, there's 50, and 163. It adds up to $929,000. And again, I think this is a backdoor approach to what the state legislature already disapproved earlier this year. And I feel that this is not the appropriate use of the Heritage funds. And the state legislature said it was not the appropriate use of the Heritage funds. And again, I feel that the backdoor approach is being used here, and it shouldn't be. But additionally, I see there's many reasons to do predator control programs. I think they should be managed through the Department of Wildlife. I take great exception to the fact that only the three proposals that were approved by private citizens and not the two proposals by the Department of Wildlife. They're the ones that this state has hired to manage our wildlife. They should be overseeing these projects. They should be recommending the projects. And we shouldn't be seeing this come from outside entities.
I'd like to ask you a question. Did you say the Heritage cannot be used for predator?
I did not say that, sir. What I said was that earlier this year, 40% of the Heritage Fund was asked to be diverted to wildlife management or to predator control. The state legislature voted against that. They said, no, that was not going to happen. And now I see $929,000 in proposals to take money from the Heritage Fund and direct
contradiction to what I feel the state legislature said earlier this year.
Let me just read you, NRS 5013575, the money in the heritage account can be used in listings for the management and control of predatory wildlife in this state.
And
It's
I agree,
NRS.
sir. I agree, but I just think that $929,000 is maybe a little large.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Probably me calling somebody. Charlie had a.
Commissioner, we're in public comment right now.
I just
Commissioner
wanted to
Powell.
correct a statement, if I could. That the previous gentleman just made a statement that was incorrect. No.
Okay.
Wait till we come bring it back to the commission.
We'll have Tina Nappy, then we'll have Judy Karen, and that's all I have.
Okay.
And then 2 other individuals. I must have cards for you that don't stay. Okay.
You have a card for me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Tina Nappy, and I'm representing myself today, and I'm here to comment specifically on these proposals. And as a person who is involved with job training for over 30 years, I guess it's good to see that this commission is so concerned about employment that they're trying to make up the $100,000 that APHIS lost at last session through these projects. And since it's really important not to put any money into science, it's really good that that component was dropped and you are just here to approve proposals for which there is virtually no foundation and for which you are therefore guaranteed no outcome. I believe that predators are in no long-term danger through your actions, and I know that you know that too, and I recollect that Mr. Jensen last year in one of his comments pointed out that they will never kill so many predators that it requires an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, and why should he, since he's looking for annual employment for his staff, and you are here to help provide it. So I do think, however, that based on the previous comment made by Mr. Smith, since these are dollars that are voluntarily given by sportsmen, they are not required, that it's good to provide some kind of justification for dollars that are spent. And these projects, I don't see how they can do it, since there's no basis on which they are being approved, and therefore there's no way that you can get any kind of verifiable outcome on them. Sportsmen need to start thinking twice whether, again, it's worth investing in this particular process. Thank you.
Thank you.
We had Judy Karen, and then I believe there was 2 individuals in the back.
Commissioners, Judy Karen for the record. I really more have a question and not really a comment at this time. I attended the Wildlife Damage Management Subcommittee on the 24th and tried to listen to the review that I was confused at the time of what transpired originally when the projects were accepted from the Heritage Committee and how they got this far. That the support material that I had downloaded from the website was one that was from the authors and also an alternative proposal from the department. The biggest thing I noticed, and I went to the meeting so I could hear the difference, is why we had 2 different areas. And I'm still not clear. The authors are asking for area 6 and 7, I believe, and the department was asking for alternatives in area 14 and 15. But I don't think I got a clearer concept of why those weren't reviewed, that the committee did go with a recommendation to keep with the original ones. And my second question is, it was stated at that meeting, if I remember right, but I don't have the draft minutes, that Elko County supported, the Elko County Advisory Board supported the proposal, or the, what do I want to say, the authors' proposals. I think that's how you stated it, that the Elko County Advisory Board supported those and they had voted on that. Was that right, Commissioner Raines? You were at that meeting. I think you were the chairman. Isn't that how you was? I don't have the minutes to go by.
This is just public comment, Judy.
Okay, so I can't ask that? Well,
You can ask it, but we're just taking your comments.
okay, so my comment is, Chairman Lent, could you read from the minutes what that statement was? Thank you.
Okay, I think there was 2 individuals that didn't have specifically written which item.
I turned in a card, I probably didn't indicate.
Okay. Okay, yes, here it is. Very good.
I'm Don Klebano. I'm a retired prof from the University of Nevada. I also serve on the Sage Grouse Committee that was appointed by Governor Gwynn and is continued by our present governor. Still active on it. We met the day before yesterday as the last meeting we had. Part of our development of the state plan also included some subcommittees, and one of them was called a technical committee, where we reviewed plans from all the different areas in the state that contain sage grouse. We had something like 100 of them. PMUs, we call them, population management units. And in reviewing those plans, we really never zeroed in on predator control as something that Nevada needs to overturn the downward trend that is occurring in sage grouse. I have worked some with nesting birds and so forth in relation to predator control. And regarding that, one time we did a project in northern Washoe County where I had been working, and involving nests and compared it with Elko County, with a study area in Elko County. The ravens virtually destroyed the nest immediately up in northern Washoe, and in Elko County, in the Elko study area, we almost had none. Basically, the difference, and the only thing you could conclude based on our research, was that there's a difference in habitat quality, nesting habitat, and there's more of it in that part of in the northeastern part of the state than there is up here. So we had a problem with ravens on nests. A project like this was developed probably based on a research that we did as one of our federal aid projects that I did in cooperation with the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And APHIS went in, I guess, about 5 or 6 years ago and controlled the ravens, and they really did a job. This egg control business virtually exterminates the birds. And I really think even now, I'm still going up and counting sage grouse in a complex that had 5 starting grounds and so forth. And I think there are fewer ravens now than there were before. So once you do this, you're going to have an impact on ravens. When it happened, when the ravens declined, we had a real jump in nesting success based on data that the Department of Wildlife gathered, and we thought, isn't that something? But in the fall, there was no change in the number of birds produced. The chicks didn't make it, although nesting was successful. Chick survival was nil. My conclusion is we got a problem with habitat up here, and then maybe in this part of the states, and in comparison to others. Anyway, that was the result. Okay.
You have 15 seconds.
Based on that, and based on this, I'm leery of predator control for sage grouse to enhance the populations. And that would be my conclusion. Another part that hasn't been discussed in here, but it's a part of the sheet that you turn out, there's a monitoring thing on here. We need to really know more about what we're doing with our predator control and the wildlife response. And I think a detailed follow-up on this kind of thing would provide evidence that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two-card system.
Next.
That was all the cards I had specifically. Oh.
That's why we didn't have.
He's got a card.
My name's Alan Moss. I live here in Reno. I'm native in Nevada. A couple of facts on your sage hen thing. In Utah here a couple of years ago, they did a similar thing on sage grouse, in that what they had done is that the Fish and Game over there had gone out and put out 600 eggs to see in the nesting areas how many were devoured within a 2-week period before the nesting occurred. They went back and did the check. Within 2 weeks, all the eggs were gone. So it wasn't limited to just the ravens or either coyotes or whatever's feeding on them. They were all gone. So they went back that next period with 600 eggs, and they doused them up to where they eliminated the predator. Well, the hatch came out good after that. But limited just to one bird or whatever, there could be more than that. With the deer, the mountain lions, mountain lion eats a deer a week. That's 52 deer per mountain lion. How many mountain lions we got in the state of Nevada? Rough estimate. We don't have a deer herd that large. Now with the coyotes, they'll eat, if there's sick deer, they'll eat the sick deer, but they'll feed on rabbits and anything else that's available. Well, a mountain lion, once it acquires the taste of that meat, that's what they want to eat. As simple as that. Now they will forage on other things if it's not there. But in my lifetime, the hunting used to be unbelievable in this state. That was before the tag draws. And there was always big deer. There was a hell of an economy for the state, for all these small towns out here, because all the out-of-state, non-resident hunters that would come into the state to hunt. It was good. But they had predator control back then, too. But in the same respects, they had management areas to where the deer were protected back in that time, to where they had a nucleus for the deer to be able to breed, and it worked out excellent. And then they did away with those management areas. But that's how it was good, and the reason why it was good back then. Thank you.
Would you leave a card with
Sure.
the secretary? Any other public comment? If not, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the commission. Okay. Now, Commissioner Howell had a comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to correct some numbers. One of the gentlemen was quoting some very large figures, and those were the numbers of the total Heritage Trust Fund requested, and not what was approved. And it's quite a big different number, 700 and something thousand. The total Heritage Trust Fund approved is 212,000.
Commissioner Capurro?
Yes, sir, thank you. I find it incongruous that we could accept these projects were set forth by two organizations.